Brandon Westfield's heart rate hit 36 beats per minute, and the machine started screaming. Naomi Chen stood frozen in the doorway of room 847, a homemade syringe clutched in her trembling hand, watching the most powerful man in Chicago decide whether to let her save his son or have her arrested. Gregory Westfield didn't move from his position at Brandon's bedside. His gray hair was uncombed for the first time in his public life. His $8 billion empire meant nothing when his only son was dying in front of him. He stared at Naomi, a 26-year-old waitress in a borrowed nurse's scrubs who claimed she could do what 50 medical specialists couldn't. Subscribe and drop where you're watching from, this gets intense. You have 60 seconds, Gregory said, his voice like gravel. Explain how a waitress knows something every doctor in this hospital missed. Then explain why I shouldn't have security throw you out that window. Richard Carmichael, Gregory's executive assistant, impeccably dressed even at 3 in the morning, stepped between Naomi and the hospital bed. Sir, this woman is clearly disturbed. She broke into a secure medical facility with an unidentified substance. We should call. I didn't break in. I walked in. Naomi's voice was steadier than she felt. And this isn't an unidentified substance. It's an antidote to Solanum somniferum extract, a rare botanical poison that mimics brain death. My father studied it 15 years ago in rural China. It's virtually undetectable by Western toxicology because it metabolizes into compounds that look like natural neurotransmitters. Dr. Fiona Blackwell, the chief neurologist who'd been treating Brandon since he collapsed, pushed past the security guard at the door. She was tall, black, and furious. Who authorized this woman's access to my patient? I did, the security guard said weakly. She said she knew what was wrong. She's a waitress. Blackwell's voice could cut steel. Not a doctor. Not a nurse. A waitress who somehow thinks she can diagnose a coma that stumped every specialist from Johns Hopkins to Switzerland. Because my father was one of those specialists. Naomi pulled a worn leather journal from her backpack. Dr. David Chen. He consulted for Northwestern University's medical school. He published 43 papers on ethnobotanical medicine before he died 5 years ago. This journal contains his field research from China. Case Study 17, a 30-year-old man poisoned with the same compound. Same symptoms Brandon has. Locked-in syndrome. Aware but paralyzed. Doctors thought he was brain dead. My father saved him with this. She held up the syringe. Richard moved closer, his expression shifting from annoyed to something darker. This is absurd. Brandon collapsed during a charity gala. He had a seizure. There was no poison. His coffee was poisoned. Naomi pulled out her phone and showed them a photo. The Drake Hotel charity gala 6 days ago. Brandon gave a speech. Had coffee on the podium. Colombian blend, 2 sugars, no cream. I know because I tracked down the catering company that supplied it. This is a photo of the cup from their cleanup crew. I paid them $500, my entire rent money, to save it instead of throwing it away. Gregory took the phone. Stared at the image. Why would you do that? Because 2 weeks ago, Brandon came into Lou Mitchell's diner where I work. He ordered breakfast. We talked while I poured his coffee. He was kind to me. Asked my name. Treated me like a person, not invisible help. Naomi's voice caught. And he told me something I thought was just rich person paranoia. He said he felt watched. Like someone close to him wanted him gone. I thought he was being dramatic. Then I saw the news about his collapse. Saw the symptoms. And I recognized them from my father's journal. The heart monitor dropped to 32 beats per minute. Alarms shrieked louder. If you have evidence, you should have gone to the police, Dr. Blackwell said. Not broken into a hospital with an unregulated substance. I did go to the police. 3 days ago. They laughed me out of the station. Said I was another conspiracy theorist chasing the $10 million reward. Naomi turned to Gregory. Your son is dying because someone poisoned him with something Western medicine doesn't recognize. The toxicology screens came back clean because they tested for Western compounds. But if you test that coffee cup with traditional Chinese reagents, she pulled small vials from her backpack. You'll find traces of Solanum somniferum. And if you let me administer this antidote, he'll wake up. Or die faster, Richard interjected. Sir, this woman has no medical license. No credentials. If you let her inject Brandon with an unknown substance and he dies, you'll be legally liable. He's already dying. Naomi shouted. Look at the monitor. 30 beats per minute. How long before his heart stops completely? Another hour? 2. What do you have to lose? Gregory stared at his son. 6 days of hoping. 6 days of specialists shaking their heads. 6 days of watching the only family he had left slip away. Test the coffee cup, he said quietly. Now. Dr. Blackwell looked like she wanted to argue. But Gregory Westfield didn't make requests, he gave orders. She took the vials from Naomi and left the room, muttering about liability and medical boards. Richard's jaw clenched. Sir, I strongly advise against. Your advice is noted. Now be quiet. Gregory turned to Naomi. Dr. Blackwell needs 30 minutes to run your test. If you're right, you can administer your antidote. If you're wrong, you'll be arrested for fraud, trespassing, and practicing medicine without a license. Clear. Clear. And if my son dies from whatever's in that syringe, I will personally destroy your life. Naomi believed him. But she also believed her father's research. And she believed Brandon Westfield was running out of time. They waited. 28 minutes. The longest 28 minutes of Naomi's life. She stood against the wall, watching Brandon's vitals drop. 29 beats per minute. 26. 24. Richard paced near the window, checking his phone constantly. Too much. Too nervous for someone who should be concerned but calm. Gregory sat in a chair beside Brandon's bed, holding his son's hand. If you're lying to me, he said without looking at Naomi, I'll make sure you never work in this city again. I'll make sure your family. My family is already gone. Naomi's voice was flat. My father died 5 years ago in a car accident on Lakeshore Drive. My mother died of cancer 2 years later. It's just me and my younger brother. So your threats mean nothing. I'm here because your son treated me like a human being, and I won't let him die if I can stop it. Gregory finally looked at her. Really looked at her. Saw the determination. The grief. The truth. Why did your father really die? He asked quietly. Before Naomi could answer, Dr. Blackwell burst back into the room. Her face was ashen. The coffee cup tested positive. Trace amounts of Solanum somniferum alkaloids. Exactly what she said. Blackwell stared at Naomi like she was seeing a ghost. How did you know? Because my father taught me to pay attention when people dismissed the impossible. Naomi stepped toward the bed. Can I administer the antidote? Gregory nodded. Richard stepped forward. Wait. I want it on record that I advised against this. Noted. Step back. Gregory's voice was ice. Naomi approached Brandon's foreline with the syringe. Her hands shook as she inserted the needle into the port. Clear liquid, a combination of 5 herbs her father had documented. Herbs she'd spent 3 days tracking down through Chicago's Chinatown, calling every herbalist who'd take her calls. She pushed the plunger. The antidote entered Brandon's bloodstream. Subscribe now, comment your location before you see what happens next. For 10 seconds, nothing changed. The heart monitor stayed at 24 beats per minute. Brandon remained motionless. Then. 26 beats. 28. 30. 34. Dr. Blackwell grabbed the monitor. That's not possible. I've never seen. 40 beats. 45. 50. Brandon's fingers twitched. Gregory leaned forward, hope and terror fighting for control of his expression. Brandon. 55 beats. 60. 65. Brandon's eyes moved behind closed lids. Rapid eye movement. Dreaming. Waking. Richard Carmichael had gone completely white. He backed toward the door. Where are you going? Naomi asked, eyes locked on him. I need to inform the board. You're not going anywhere. Gregory stood, blocking the exit. Something in his expression had shifted. He was looking at Richard differently now. Suspiciously. If Brandon was poisoned, someone poisoned him. Someone who had access. Someone close. Richard's hand moved to his phone. Gregory's security guard grabbed his wrist. Brandon's eyes opened. After 6 days of silence, after 6 days of medical impossibility, Brandon Westfield looked directly at his father and whispered 2 words that changed everything. Richard did it. The room exploded into chaos. Gregory lunged for Richard, but the security guard was faster, pinning the executive assistant against the wall with professional efficiency. Richard's phone clattered to the floor. Dr. Blackwell rushed to Brandon's side, checking his pupils, his vitals, muttering medical terms that sounded like prayers. And Brandon, still weak, still pale, but awake, locked eyes with Naomi. Thank you, he whispered. Then his gaze shifted to his father. I remember everything. Every word. Every person who visited. I was locked inside. Aware but paralyzed. For 6 days. Don't talk. Save your strength. Dar. Blackwell adjusted his her hands shaking slightly. She'd spent 6 days watching this young man slip away. Now he was back from the edge of death, and her entire understanding of medicine had just been shattered. I need to run tests. Neurological assessments. We need to understand how a waitress did what you couldn't. Richard's voice cut through the room, sharp and desperate. He'd recovered from his initial shock, and now he was fighting back. This is insane. Brandon is disoriented. Confused from the coma. I would never, I've been with this family for 15 years. Exactly. Brandon's voice was stronger now. Each word came with effort, but with clarity. 15 years. Which is how long you've been stealing from us. Gregory froze. What? 2 weeks before the gala, I found irregularities in the quarterly reports. Payments to shell companies that don't exist. Transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. $8 million over 3 years. All authorized by Richard's division. Brandon coughed, wincing. I confronted him privately. Thought we could handle it internally. He said he'd fix it. Return the money. Explain everything. Instead, he poisoned me at the Drake Hotel. Richard shook his head violently. That's a lie. I did no such thing. You handed me the coffee personally. Colombian blend, 2 sugars, no cream. You said it was from the VIP catering staff. Said you wanted to make sure I had everything I needed before I went on stage. Brandon's eyes were cold. 10 minutes later, I collapsed. You were the last person to touch that cup. Naomi's mind raced. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through the photos she'd collected from the catering company. There, a security camera still from the Drake Hotel green room. Richard Carmichael holding a coffee cup, standing beside Brandon 5 minutes before the speech. Time stamp, 7:48 p.m. Brandon collapsed at 7:58 p.m. She showed Gregory. He stared at the image like it was a death sentence. This doesn't prove anything, Richard said quickly. I got him coffee. That's my job. Someone else could have poisoned it. Show him the will clause, Brandon interrupted. The one in your estate planning documents, Dad. The one Richard helped draft. Gregory's face went pale. He understood immediately. Dr. Blackwell and Naomi didn't. What clause? Naomi asked. Gregory sat down heavily in the chair beside Brandon's bed. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. If Brandon dies before his 24th birthday, control of Westfield Technologies doesn't automatically go to appointed board members. It goes to the individual who has demonstrated the most loyal service to the family over the previous 15 years. It's intentionally vague. Open to interpretation. And I turned 24 in 3 weeks, Brandon added. If I died yesterday, Richard's lawyers could argue he fit that definition. He's been Dad's right hand for 15 years. Closer than most family members. With me gone and that clause in place, Richard could have claimed controlling shares. 49% of an $8 billion company. Hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. This betrayal runs deep. That's circumstantial. Speculative. Richard was sweating now, but his voice remained steady. You can't prove I poisoned anyone based on a vague will clause and the fact that I handed you coffee. I can prove you paid someone to acquire Solanum somniferum extract. Naomi pulled up another image on her phone. 3 weeks ago, you wired $5,000 to an herbalist in San Francisco who specializes in rare Chinese botanical compounds. I found the transaction when I was researching where someone in Chicago could get this poison. There are only 6 suppliers in the United States. I called all of them. One remembers a man matching your description. Paid cash on delivery. Refused to give a real name. Richard's expression cracked. Just for a second. But it was enough. The herbalist gave me security footage, Naomi continued. I can have it here in 10 minutes. It was a bluff. She had no footage. But Richard didn't know that. This is a setup, Richard said, voice rising. She's lying. She's a con artist running a scheme with the family. Then explain these. Gregory had picked up Richard's phone from the floor. It wasn't locked, the fall had triggered emergency bypass. He scrolled through messages, his face darkening with each screen. Texts to a number in the Cayman Islands. Dated 2 weeks ago. Package delivered. Subject will be incapacitated within 72 hours. Execute phase 2 on my signal. The room went silent except for Brandon's heart monitor, now steady at 70 beats per minute. That's not my phone, Richard tried. Someone planted. Gregory stood and walked to Richard slowly, deliberately. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You poisoned my son. You tried to steal my company. You've been lying to me for 15 years. Sir, I can explain. Gregory punched him. Hard. Richard's head snapped back against the wall. Blood trickled from his nose. Dad. Brandon called out. Don't. Let the police handle. But Gregory wasn't listening. His fist connected with Richard's jaw again. The security guard had to pull him back. Call Detective Santos, Gregory told the guard. Chicago PD, tell him I have a confession to make. I just assaulted the man who tried to murder my son. And I'd do it again. Richard slumped against the wall, blood on his face, defeat in his eyes. But when he looked up, he was smiling. A cold, calculated smile that made Naomi's skin crawl. You think you've won? Richard's voice was thick with blood, but steady. You have no idea what you've just walked into. What's that supposed to mean? Dr. Blackwell demanded. Richard turned to Naomi. You're smart. Smarter than these doctors. Tell them what happens next. Naomi felt ice spreading through her chest. The bank statements. You're going to claim someone paid me to stage this. Not just claim. Richard pulled a tablet from his jacket pocket with his free hand. The security guard hadn't confiscated it yet. He brought up a screen and turned it toward Gregory. Bank statements. Deposits to Naomi Chen's account. $250,000. Dated 10 days ago. From a Westfield Technologies subsidiary account. The tablet showed official-looking bank records. Naomi's name. Her account number. Large deposits she'd never seen. I never received that money, Naomi said immediately. Those are fake. Are they? Richard's smile widened. Check your account. Naomi pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Logged into her bank app. Her balance showed $253,847.32. She stared at the screen in disbelief. That's impossible. I don't know where that came from. From me, according to these records, Gregory said quietly, looking at Richard's tablet. Records showing I authorized payments to Naomi Chen for medical consultation services. There are emails. Signed contracts. All dated before Brandon woke up. They're forged, Brandon said immediately. Dad would never. Of course they're forged, Gregory snapped. But they're convincing. Professional. Richard planned this. If Brandon woke up and accused him, Richard would make Naomi look like the real criminal. A con artist we hired to frame him. Richard laughed. Dark. Bitter. And the best part? She practiced medicine without a license. Trespassed in a secure hospital. Injected a patient with an unregulated substance. Even if I go down, she goes down with me. Maybe harder. The door burst open. Detective Miguel Santos entered, badge visible on his belt, 2 uniformed officers behind him. He was mid-40s, Latino, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. Someone called about an assault. Santos looked around the room. Took in Richard's bloody face, Gregory's bruised knuckles, Brandon awake in the hospital bed, and Naomi standing in the corner with a phone displaying $253,000. His gaze settled on Naomi. Naomi Chen. Yes. I'm going to need you to come with me. We have questions about financial irregularities connected to this case. She saved my son's life, Gregory protested. She's not the criminal here. Then she has nothing to worry about. Santos nodded to one of the officers. Ms. Chen, we can do this easy or hard. Your choice. Naomi looked at Brandon. He was awake. Alive. That's what mattered. Even if it cost her everything. I'll come willingly. As the officers led her toward the door, Richard called out one final time. You should have taken the $10 million and stayed in your diner, waitress. Now you're going to prison. And I'm going to walk free. Subscribe now. Naomi just became the suspect. The Chicago Police Department's interrogation room smelled like stale coffee and broken promises. Naomi sat in a metal chair bolted to the floor, handcuffs digging into her wrists. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Detective Santos's face as he slid a folder across the table. Tell me about the money, Santos said. No preliminaries. No small talk. Just straight to the point. Naomi stared at the bank statements inside the folder. Her name. Her account number. Deposits totaling $253,000 spread across 5 transactions over 2 weeks. All from Westfield Technologies subsidiary accounts. All authorized with digital signatures she'd never created. I've never seen this money. Someone put it in my account without my knowledge. That's convenient. Santos leaned back in his chair. You make $30,000 a year slinging coffee at Lou Mitchell's. Suddenly you've got $250,000, and you just happen to be the person who saved a billionaire's son right when his father was offering a $10 million reward. I didn't do it for money. I did it because Brandon was dying, and I knew how to help him. A waitress with no medical degree knew something 50 specialists missed. You understand how that sounds? It sounds impossible. But so is someone waking up from a 6-day coma caused by a poison that doesn't exist in Western medical textbooks. Naomi met his eyes. My father was Dr. David Chen. Northwestern University. He published 43 papers on ethnobotanical medicine before he died 5 years ago. I learned from him. Santos opened another folder. David Chen. Died in a single-vehicle accident on Lake Shore Drive, October 14, 2020. Lost control, hit the barrier, car caught fire. Ruled accidental. He paused. You don't think it was an accident? No. I don't. Why not? Naomi pulled her father's journal from her backpack. The police had let her keep it since it wasn't considered evidence yet. She opened to the final entry, dated 3 days before his death. Her father's handwriting, normally neat, was shaky. Rushed. Santos read aloud, met with Helen Westfield today. She's dying. Same symptoms as the case from Yunnan province. Someone poisoned her. She knows who but won't say, afraid for her son. I told her I can synthesize the antidote, but I need time. She said there is no time. They're watching her. Watching me. If anything happens to me, protect the research. Don't trust Westfield Technologies. The room went quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Helen Westfield, Santos said slowly. Brandon's mother. She died 5 years ago. Natural causes according to the medical examiner. 3 weeks after my father wrote that entry. And 3 days after he died. Naomi's voice was steady. They were both murdered. Same poison. Same people. And when Brandon started asking questions about financial irregularities at his father's company, they poisoned him too. They. Who's they? I thought it was just Richard Carmichael. But Richard said something in the hospital room. He said I had no idea what I'd walked into. Like he was part of something bigger. Santos studied her for a long moment. Then he stood and left the room without explanation. Naomi sat alone for 15 minutes, staring at the two-way mirror, wondering if this was the moment her life ended. When Santos returned, he wasn't alone. A young man followed him, 19, Asian, wearing a University of Chicago hoodie and carrying a laptop covered in coding stickers. Ty. Naomi's voice cracked with relief. Her younger brother set the laptop on the table and hugged her awkwardly around the handcuffs. I came as soon as I heard. Are you okay? I'm in an interrogation room accused of fraud. What do you think? I think someone made a very stupid mistake trying to frame my sister. Ty opened his laptop and turned it toward Santos. I'm a computer science major. Data forensics concentration. And these bank statements? They're fake. Subscribe and drop your location, the truth is coming out. Santos leaned forward. Explain. Ty pulled up lines. These deposits show up in Naomi's account, but they don't exist in Westfield Technologies' actual banking system. Someone created a mirror image, fake statements that look real but aren't connected to any actual transfer of funds. How is that possible? You need administrative access to both the bank's interface and Westfield's accounting software. Basically, someone inside Westfield Technologies with high-level clearance created phantom transactions. Ty scrolled through more code. I traced the origin point. The fake statements were generated from a server inside Westfield Technologies headquarters. Specifically, from the executive suite. Richard Carmichael's division. Santos grabbed his phone. When? Yesterday at 11:47 p.m. About 4 hours before Naomi entered the hospital. Ty pulled up more data. But here's what's interesting. The server that created the fake statements. It's been active for 5 years. Creating false records. Covering financial tracks. I found evidence of other phantom transactions. Millions of dollars moved through shell companies, then scrubbed from the official records. Richard's embezzlement, Naomi said. Brandon mentioned $8 million over 3 years. But if this has been going on for 5 years. It's more than $8 million, Ty finished. Try $42 million. Stolen systematically from Westfield Technologies and hidden through false accounting. Santos was already on his phone with someone from the Financial Crimes Unit. Ty kept talking, pulling up more evidence, transaction logs, IP addresses, communications metadata. There's something else, Ty said quietly when Santos finished his call. I found communication records between Richard's server and another account. Encrypted messages. I broke the encryption. It's not sophisticated, just obfuscated. They're using a code name. Nightingale. Naomi's blood went cold. What kind of messages? Ty turned the laptop toward her. Message after message. Dated over 5 years. Nightingale, the Chen problem is handled. Accident on Lake Shore Drive, asterisk. Richard, confirmed. Research destroyed, asterisk. Nightingale, fire took care of his lab. Nothing left, asterisk. Richard, and Helen, asterisk. Nightingale, 3 weeks. Natural causes. No one will question it, asterisk. Naomi couldn't breathe. Her father's accident wasn't an accident. His lab fire wasn't an accident. Helen Westfield's death wasn't natural. All planned. All coordinated. All by someone with the codename Nightingale. Who is Nightingale? Santos demanded. I don't know, Ty said. The messages route through multiple proxy servers. But whoever it is, they have access to medical records, police reports, and coroner's files. They knew how to make murders look like accidents. And they've been working with Richard for at least 5 years. Santos unlocked Naomi's handcuffs. You're not under arrest. You're a witness. And possibly a target. He turned to Ty. Can you trace these messages? Find out who Nightingale is? I can try. But it'll take time. We don't have time. Naomi rubbed her wrists where the cuffs had dug in. Richard knows we're onto him. Nightingale knows too. Whoever they are, they've killed at least 3 people and gotten away with it for 5 years. What's stopping them from killing again? As if in answer, Santos's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. When? Pause. How bad? Longer pause. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Naomi. There's been a fire. Your apartment building on West Addison. Started 20 minutes ago. Arson. Naomi felt the world tilt. Everything she owned. Every memory. Her father's research notes, the originals. Was anyone hurt? She whispered. They're still evacuating. But the fire started on your floor. Your unit. Santos grabbed his keys. Someone just tried to kill you and destroy evidence at the same time. Ty grabbed Naomi's arm. We need to get you somewhere safe. No. Naomi's voice was steel. We need to get back to that hospital. Because if they tried to kill me, they're going to try to kill Brandon next. He's the only other person who can testify against Richard. Santos was already moving toward the door. I'll call hospital security. His phone rang again. Different number. He answered. The voice on the other end was loud enough for Naomi to hear. Detective, this is Northwestern Memorial Security. We have a situation. Richard Carmichael escaped custody 10 minutes ago. He assaulted the officer guarding him and disappeared. We've locked down the building, but Santos didn't wait for the rest. He ran. Naomi and Ty ran with him. Somewhere in Chicago, Richard Carmichael was free. Nightingale was watching. And Brandon Westfield, still weak, still recovering, was alone in a hospital room with a killer on the loose. Comment where you're watching from. This chase just started. Naomi's apartment building looked like a war zone. Flames poured from the third-floor windows where her unit used to be. Fire trucks blocked West Addison Street, their lights painting the night red and blue. Firefighters shouted orders while residents huddled on the sidewalk in pajamas and shock, staring at their burning homes. Naomi stood behind the police barricade, watching everything she owned turn to ash. Her father's research notes. His original journals. The photographs of him she'd kept in shoeboxes because she couldn't afford frames. Gone. Accelerant detected in 3 locations, a fire marshal told Detective Santos. Your unit, Ms. Chen, the hallway outside your door, and the back stairwell. Professional job. Whoever did this knew how to make it spread fast. Ty stood beside Naomi, his arm around her shoulders. We'll figure this out. We'll. They killed him twice, Naomi said quietly. My father. They killed him 5 years ago. And tonight, they killed his legacy. Everything he worked for. Every journal. Every note. Every piece of evidence that could prove what happened to Helen Westfield. Not everything. Ty pulled out his phone. I scanned all of his journals 3 years ago. Part of a digital preservation project for my data management class. They're on a secure cloud server. Every page. Every diagram. Every case study. Naomi turned to him, hope flickering. You have copies? Encrypted and backed up in 3 locations. Whoever set that fire destroyed the originals, but they didn't destroy the research. A black SUV pulled up to the barricade. The back door opened, and Keisha Wade stepped out, tall, black, late 30s, moving with military precision. She wore tactical gear and had a gun visible on her hip. Naomi Chen. Her voice was all business. Who's asking? Keisha Wade. Head of Security for Westfield Technologies. Mr. Westfield sent me. You saved his son's life, and now someone's trying to kill you. We're getting you to a secure location. Santos stepped between them. Ms. Chen is under police protection. With all due respect, Detective, someone just burned down her apartment while she was in your custody. How's that protection working out? Keisha's eyes were hard. Gregory Westfield has the resources to keep her safe. You have a police force stretched thin across an entire city. Which one do you trust? Santos looked at Naomi. Your call. Naomi looked at the burning building. At Ty. At Keisha's armored SUV with tinted windows and enough security to protect the president. I'm going to the hospital. Brandon's alone. If Richard escaped. Brandon's secure, Keisha interrupted. I have 4 guards on his room. Armed. Trained. No one gets in without clearance. But you're exposed out here. And whoever set this fire isn't done. As if to prove her point, Keisha's radio crackled. Wade, we have movement. Black sedan, 2 occupants, circling the block. Third pass in 10 minutes. Plates are fake. Keisha grabbed Naomi's arm. In the vehicle. Now. Santos started to protest, but Ty was already pulling Naomi toward the SUV. They climbed in. Keisha followed, slamming the door. The driver pulled away from the curb before Santos could stop them. Where are we going? Naomi demanded. Northwestern Memorial. But not the front entrance. Keisha was on her radio, coordinating with her team. Richard Carmichael is somewhere in Chicago with money, connections, and nothing to lose. He knows you can prove he poisoned Brandon. You're a loose end he needs to eliminate. The SUV took a sharp turn onto Lake Shore Drive, heading north. Naomi watched the city lights blur past, her mind racing. Richard said something in the hospital, she said. That I had no idea what I'd walked into. He wasn't working alone. There's someone else. Someone called Nightingale. Keisha went still. Where did you hear that name? My brother found encrypted messages between Richard and Nightingale. Going back 5 years. Coordinating murders. My father. Helen Westfield. Maybe others. Nightingale. Keisha repeated the word like a curse. We've been hearing rumors about Nightingale for 2 years. Corporate espionage. Blackmail. Always one step ahead. Never leaves evidence. We thought it was a myth. It's not a myth. It's real. And it has access to medical records, police reports, and coroner's files. Naomi turned to face her. Who at Westfield Technologies has that kind of access? Short list. Gregory. A few board members. The chief legal counsel. And, Keisha stopped. And who? Dr. Fiona Blackwell. She's on retainer as Westfield Technologies medical consultant. Has been for 8 years. Access to all employee health records, insurance claims, everything. Naomi's blood went cold. Dr. Blackwell. The neurologist who'd been treating Brandon. Who'd been in the room when Naomi administered the antidote. Who'd left to test the coffee cup and returned with confirmation, but also with 30 minutes alone to make phone calls. We need to warn Brandon, Naomi said urgently. Subscribe now, the doctor isn't who she seems. Keisha was already calling her team. Security detail, this is Wade. Dr. Blackwell is not authorized to enter Brandon's room. Repeat, Dr. Blackwell is a potential threat. If she approaches, detain her immediately. Static. Then, copy that. But Wade, we have a problem. Dr. Blackwell entered the room 4 minutes ago with an emergency medication order signed by Gregory Westfield. She's inside with Brandon now. Keisha's face went pale. Get her out. Now. We're trying, but she locked the door from the inside. Says she needs sterile environment for the injection. The radio cut to screaming. Gunshots. Then nothing. Team 2, respond. Keisha shouted into the radio. What's your status? Silence. Drive faster, Keisha told the driver. Then to Naomi, how long does Brandon have after being poisoned with that compound? If it's Solanum somniferum. 10 to 15 minutes before seizures start. 20 minutes before permanent brain damage. 30 before death. They were 12 minutes from the hospital in light traffic. But traffic wasn't light. Ty was already on his laptop, hacking into the hospital's security camera system. I'm in. Room 847. I can see, oh God. He turned the screen. Dr. Fiona Blackwell stood over Brandon's bed, syringe in hand, injecting something into his foreline. 4 security guards lay on the floor, unconscious or dead. Brandon was fighting weakly, trying to pull the 4 out, but he was still too weak from 6 days in a coma. She just poisoned him, Ty whispered. We're watching her kill him in real time. Naomi grabbed Keisha's radio. Brandon, if you can hear this, pull out your 4. Disconnect everything. Don't let the medication reach your bloodstream. On the screen, Brandon's hand moved toward the 4 port. Blackwell grabbed his wrist. They struggled. Then Blackwell did something that made Naomi's stomach drop. She pulled out a second syringe. This one went directly into Brandon's arm. No 4. Straight into the vein. How long now? Keisha asked. Minutes. Maybe less. Naomi's hands shook. The antidote I used before, it takes time to synthesize. Hours. We don't have hours. Then we get him to the ER. Stomach pump. Dialysis. Something. It won't work. The compound bonds to neuroreceptors. You can't filter it out. Naomi closed her eyes, thinking. Her father's journals. Case Study 17. The patient in China. What had her father done when the antidote wasn't available? Epinephrine, she said suddenly. High doses. It doesn't neutralize the poison, but it counteracts the paralysis long enough to keep the heart beating. Buys time. Time for what? For me to make more antidote. But I need a lab. Equipment. The herbs are in Chinatown, but synthesizing them takes. I know someone. Tai was already texting. Professor Kim. My organic chemistry teacher. He has a private lab. He owes me a favor. The SUV screeched into the hospital's underground parking garage. They ran for the elevators. 8th floor. Room 847. The hallway was chaos. Medical staff rushing in. Security guards being loaded onto stretchers. And Dr. Fiona Blackwell standing calmly in the middle of it all, hands raised, surrendering to Detective Santos who'd arrived 30 seconds before them. I was trying to save him, Blackwell said calmly. Richard Carmichael threatened my family. Said he'd kill my daughter if I didn't administer a sedative. I had no choice. You had a choice, Naomi said, pushing past Santos into Brandon's room. You've always had a choice. Brandon lay on the bed, seizing. His eyes were open but unfocused. Heart rate dropping. Just like 6 days ago. Naomi grabbed the epinephrine from the crash cart and injected him. Once. Twice. 3 times the normal dose. His heart rate stabilized. The seizing stopped. But he wasn't waking up. How long does the epinephrine last? Santos asked. 2 hours. Maybe 3. Naomi looked at Tai. Call your professor. Tell him we need that lab. Now. Hit subscribe, it's a race against time. Dr. Blackwell smiled from the hallway. Even in handcuffs, even surrounded by police, she smiled. You can't save him, she said quietly. Nightingale always wins. Who is Nightingale? Santos demanded. Blackwell's smile widened. You're looking at the wrong person, detective. You've been looking at the wrong person the entire time. And then she glanced toward the hospital room's window. Where Gregory Westfield stood, watching his son die. Again. The chemistry lab at the University of Chicago smelled like copper and desperation. Professor Kim had cleared his workspace at 4 a.m. without asking questions. One look at Tai's face told him everything he needed to know. Now Naomi stood over a makeshift distillation setup, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle while the clock on the wall counted down Brandon's remaining minutes. 1 hour and 43 minutes since the epinephrine injection. Maybe 17 minutes left before his heart gave out. How much longer? Keisha demanded from the doorway. She'd stationed herself between Naomi and the rest of the world, gun drawn, trusting no one. 10 minutes for the extraction. 5 for the binding process. 3 for cooling. Naomi's hands moved with practiced precision, measuring compounds her father had taught her to synthesize when she was 16. 18 minutes total. He doesn't have 18 minutes. Then he doesn't have a chance. Naomi poured boiling water over the ground herbs. The mixture turned dark green, releasing a smell like earth and funeral flowers. This is the only antidote that exists. I'm making it as fast as I can. Tai worked at his laptop nearby, fingers flying across the keyboard. He'd pulled every file from Dr. Blackwell's confiscated phone, messages, emails, financial records. The woman had been sloppy, overconfident. Or maybe she'd wanted to be caught. Found something, Ty said. Encrypted folder. Password protected. Give me a minute. We don't have a minute, Keisha snapped. Then we don't get answers. Ty didn't look up from the screen. But if you want to know who Nightingale is, I need time to break this encryption. Naomi strained the herb mixture through cheesecloth, separating liquid from solids. The liquid was the base. Now came the delicate part, adding the binding agents that would make it biochemically active. Too much and it was poison. Too little and it was useless. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, asterisk precision saves lives. Guessing kills, asterisk. She measured. Mixed. Heated. Her hands shook but her movement stayed steady. Got it. Ty's voice cut through the lab. Blackwell's files just opened. And you're not going to believe what's in here. He turned the laptop toward them. On the screen, a video file dated 5 years ago. The thumbnail showed Helen Westfield in a hospital bed, thin and pale, dying. Ty pressed play. Helen's voice was weak but clear. My name is Helen Marie Westfield. Today is October 3, 2020. I'm recording this because I'm dying, and I know my husband is the one killing me. The room went silent except for the bubbling of Naomi's chemical mixture. Gregory poisoned me, Helen continued on the video. 3 weeks ago, I discovered he'd been embezzling from Westfield Technologies for years. Not millions. Hundreds of millions. Funneled through shell companies, offshore accounts, fake contracts. When I confronted him, he said I was mistaken. 2 days later, I collapsed. The doctors can't figure out what's wrong. But I know. I've seen him do this before. Naomi stopped stirring. Before? Helen coughed on the video, her face contorting in pain. His first wife. Brandon's birth mother. She died when Brandon was 2 years old. Heart failure, they said. But she was 28 and healthy. I didn't question it then. I was the mistress who became the wife. I thought I was lucky. A bitter laugh. 15 years later, I'm dying the same way she did. And I understand. Gregory doesn't divorce. He eliminates. Jesus, Keisha whispered. I found a doctor who understands what's happening, Helen continued. Dr. David Chen at Northwestern. He says it's a rare botanical poison. He can synthesize an antidote, but he needs time. Gregory won't give me time. He's already talking about my will, about protecting Brandon's inheritance. He's planning my funeral while I'm still breathing. Helen leaned closer to the camera. If you're watching this, I'm dead. And Dr. Chen probably is too. Gregory doesn't leave loose ends. But Brandon, her voice broke. Brandon is a good person. Better than his father. Better than me. Don't let Gregory turn him into another victim. Don't let him inherit his father's empire built on corpses. The video ended. Ty pulled up another file. Financial records. Wire transfers from Gregory Westfield's personal accounts to offshore shell companies. Then from those shell companies to Richard Carmichael. To Dr. Blackwell. To the herbalist in San Francisco who sold the poison. To a mechanic in Chicago who sabotaged Dr. Chen's car. Gregory isn't Nightingale, Ty said quietly. Gregory is the target Nightingale's been protecting. Blackwell called herself Nightingale to hide the real mastermind. But all the money, all the orders, all the murders, they trace back to one person. He pulled up a final document. A will. Gregory Westfield's will. Updated 3 weeks ago. If Brandon dies, the company goes to the most loyal family member. Ty highlighted a clause buried in page 47. Gregory's definition of family member includes legal spouses, blood relatives, and adopted children. Adopted children. Naomi's blood turned to ice. Gregory adopted someone? Not officially. But there's a document here. Sealed adoption records from 28 years ago. Gregory was the benefactor. Paid for everything. Provided for the child's entire upbringing. The adoption was kept secret to avoid media attention. Who? Keisha demanded. Ty pulled up a birth certificate. Then a photo. Then a name that made everything click into place. Dr. Fiona Blackwell. Born Fiona Westfield. Gregory's daughter from his first marriage, the one who supposedly died of heart failure. She didn't die. Gregory sent her away. Raised her in secret. Made her a doctor. And when he needed someone to kill for him, he used his own daughter. Subscribe now, this family is poison. The chemistry mixture bubbled. Naomi pulled it off the heat and began the cooling process. Her mind raced. Blackwell killed her own stepmother, Naomi said slowly. Helen. Then she killed my father when he figured out what happened. And when Brandon got too close to uncovering Gregory's embezzlement, she poisoned him too. All on her father's orders. Not orders, Ty corrected, scrolling through more messages. Suggestions. Gregory never explicitly tells anyone to kill. He just plants ideas. Mentions problems. Wonders aloud how nice it would be if those problems disappeared. Blackwell interpreted those hints as instructions and acted. Gregory kept his hands clean. Until now, Keisha said. Brandon woke up. Started talking. Gregory's entire operation is falling apart. Which is why Blackwell poisoned Brandon again, Naomi finished. One final attempt to protect her father. Even if it meant going to prison herself. The antidote finished cooling. Naomi drew it into a syringe. 20 milliliters of dark green liquid that could save Brandon's life. If they had time. Keisha's phone rang. Hospital security. She answered. Listened. Her face went pale. Brandon's crashing. Heart rate at 40. They're prepping for emergency resuscitation. How long do we have? Minutes. Maybe less. Naomi grabbed the syringe and ran for the door. Keisha and Ty followed, leaving Professor Kim's lab in chaos. They piled into the SUV. The driver floored it toward Northwestern Memorial. But as they sped through Chicago's empty pre-dawn streets, Naomi couldn't shake one thought: if Gregory Westfield had been orchestrating murders for decades, if he'd killed 2 wives and countless others, if he'd poisoned his own son to protect his empire. What would he do when he realized they knew everything? Detective Santos called Keisha's phone. She answered on speaker. We have a problem, Santos said. Gregory Westfield left the hospital 20 minutes ago. We tried to stop him for questioning, but he has diplomatic immunity through some international business council. We can't legally detain him without an arrest warrant, and we don't have enough evidence yet. Where did he go? Keisha demanded. We don't know. His security team blocked our surveillance. But 10 minutes ago, we got a 911 call. Fire at Westfield Technologies headquarters. Started in the records room. Every financial document, every archived file, everything that could prove embezzlement, it's burning right now. Naomi stared at the syringe in her hand. The antidote that could save Brandon. But even if they saved him, even if he survived and testified, Gregory was already destroying evidence. Covering his tracks. Preparing to disappear into one of his offshore havens where extradition didn't exist. He's not going to stop, Naomi said quietly. Even if we save Brandon, Gregory will just try again. And again. Until his son is dead and the truth is buried with him. Then we don't just save Brandon, Ty said, typing furiously on his laptop. We trap his father. And I think I know how. Hit subscribe. The final plan is in motion. The SUV screeched into the hospital parking garage. They ran for the elevators. 8th floor. Room 847. Where Brandon Westfield lay dying. And where his father's 30-year killing spree was about to end. One way or another. Brandon's hospital room had been transformed into a war room. Medical equipment beeped urgently while Ty set up 3 laptops on the windowsill, their screens glowing blue in the pre-dawn darkness. Detective Santos coordinated with the FBI on his phone. And Naomi stood over Brandon, injecting the antidote into his 4-line for the second time in 12 hours, praying it worked as fast as before. How long? Santos asked, pocketing his phone. Last time, his vitals stabilized within 3 minutes. Heart rate improved within 5. Naomi watched the monitors. Brandon's heart rate held steady at 38. Too low. Dangerously low. But he's weaker now. The poisons had more time to bind. This might take longer. We don't have longer, Keisha said from the doorway, her gun trained on the hallway. Hospital security just reported suspicious activity in the parking garage. 2 unmarked vans. No plates. Armed men inside. They're not police. Gregory's private security, Santos said. He's not running. He's coming back to finish what Blackwell started. 40 beats per minute. Brandon's fingers twitched. Naomi allowed herself a breath of hope. Ty, where are we on the plan? Santos moved to the window, looking down at the parking garage. Ty's fingers flew across 3 keyboards simultaneously. Helen's video is uploaded to every major news network secure server. Time-stamped. Can't be deleted. The moment I hit send, it goes public. Gregory's financial records too, every offshore account, every shell company, every payment to Richard and Blackwell. It's all queued up. But... Santos heard the hesitation. But the second I release it, Gregory knows we have everything. He disappears. And with his resources, he could be in a non-extradition country within 6 hours. We'd never find him. So we need him here. In Chicago. Long enough for the FBI to arrest him. Santos turned to Keisha. Can you stall his security team? I can try. But if they're here to kill witnesses, they're not going to stop for a conversation. Keisha's radio crackled. Her team in the garage. Wade, they're exiting the vans. 8 men. Military-grade weapons. They're heading for the service elevators. 55 beats per minute. Brandon's eyes moved beneath closed lids. We need to evacuate, Santos said. Move Brandon to a secure location. He can't be moved, Naomi interrupted. The antidote is still working. Disconnecting him now could cause cardiac arrest. He stays here for at least 10 more minutes. We don't have 10 minutes. Keisha checked her weapon. We have maybe 3 before Gregory's team reaches this floor. Then we don't wait for them to come to us. Ty pulled up the hospital's building schematics on one laptop. There's a freight elevator at the end of this wing. Goes directly to the loading dock. If we can get Brandon on a gurney and move fast. 62 beats per minute. Brandon's hand moved. His fingers found Naomi's wrist and squeezed. He's waking up, Naomi whispered. Brandon's eyes opened. Unfocused at first, then locking onto Naomi's face. Again. His voice was barely audible. He poisoned me again. Your father. And Dr. Blackwell. Naomi helped him sit up slowly. But we know everything now. Helen's video. The financial records. All of it. We're going to stop him. No. Brandon's grip tightened on her wrist. You don't understand. My father doesn't lose. Ever. He spent 30 years building contingencies. Backup plans. If you expose him, he'll activate something worse than killing me. He'll. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, dim red bulbs that turned the hospital into a nightmare maze. Keisha's radio crackled with static, then died. The elevators stopped. The building's electronic locks disengaged with audible clicks. Total power failure, Ty said, staring at his laptops running on battery power. But the hospital has backup generators. They should have kicked in immediately. Someone cut the backup generators, Santos said. Gregory's team. They're isolating this floor. Subscribe, they're trapped. Gunfire erupted in the hallway. Keisha returned fire through the doorway, then slammed it shut and locked it. We have 30 seconds before they breach this door. Maybe less. Santos helped Naomi disconnect Brandon's monitors. The machines went silent, no longer tracking his vital signs. Brandon struggled to stand, still weak but conscious enough to move with help. The freight elevator, Ty said, grabbing his laptops. It's manual override. Doesn't need power. They moved into the hallway. Red emergency lights cast everything in blood-colored shadows. To their right, Gregory's security team was breaching rooms systematically, moving closer. To their left, the freight elevator, 50 feet away. I'll hold them off, Keisha said. Get Brandon out. You can't hold 8 armed men alone, Santos protested. I don't have to hold them. Just slow them down. Keisha ejected her magazine, checked the rounds, reloaded. When you get outside, call FBI. Tell them Gregory Westfield just ordered an armed assault on a hospital. That's domestic terrorism. They can arrest him without a warrant. Keisha, Naomi started. Go. Now. Before I change my mind. They ran. Santos supporting Brandon on one side, Naomi on the other. Ty ahead with his laptops. Behind them, Keisha's gunfire echoed through the corridor. The freight elevator was old, industrial, designed for moving supplies. Ty yanked the manual override lever. The doors opened with a grinding sound that seemed impossibly loud in the emergency lighting. They piled inside. Santos hit the loading dock button. The elevator lurched downward with mechanical groans. Is Keisha going to? Naomi couldn't finish the question. She's former Special Forces, Santos said. If anyone can survive that, she can. The elevator descended through darkness. Brandon leaned heavily against the wall, breathing hard. Where's my father? We don't know, Ty said. He left the hospital. Destroyed records at his headquarters. We thought he was running. He's not running. Brandon closed his eyes. He's in the building. Watching. He wants to see me die. Wants to know it's done. How do you know? Because that's what he did with my mother. His first wife. The one who supposedly died of heart failure when I was 2. Brandon's voice was hollow. I remember fragments. Being in a hospital room. My mother in the bed. Him standing by the window, watching. Waiting. I thought it was a dream. But it wasn't, was it? Naomi felt sick. Dr. Blackwell is your half-sister. Gregory's daughter from his first marriage. He faked her death and raised her in secret. That explains the photos, Brandon said quietly. In his study. Pictures of a little girl. He said it was a niece. But she had his eyes. The elevator shuddered to a stop at the loading dock level. The doors opened onto darkness. No emergency lights here. Just shadows and the distant sound of sirens. They emerged into the loading area, vast, empty, filled with pallets and medical supply crates. One exit led to the street where ambulances waited. Freedom was 30 feet away. Then the overhead lights blazed on. Blinding. Painful. When Naomi's eyes adjusted, she saw him. Gregory Westfield stood at the exit, blocking their escape. Alone. Unarmed. But somehow more terrifying than his 8-man security team upstairs. "Hello, son," Gregory said calmly. "I was hoping we could talk before you died." Santos reached for his gun. Gregory raised his hand. "I wouldn't. There are snipers on the rooftops across the street. You draw that weapon, detective, and everyone in this room dies. Including Brandon." Santos's hand froze. "Dad." Brandon stepped forward, pulling away from Naomi's support. He was shaking but standing on his own. "It's over. We have everything. Helen's video. The financial records. Proof of all of it. Do you?" Gregory's expression didn't change. "Did you check your laptops, Ty?" Ty opened his laptop. His face went pale. "The files are gone. All of them. Helen's video. The financial records. Everything I uploaded. It's been wiped from the servers." "Remote access virus," Gregory said pleasantly. "Triggered the moment you connected to the hospital's Wi-Fi. Every copy of every file, deleted. Including your cloud backups. Your professor's lab computers. Your phone. All of it. Gone. Hit subscribe," he planned for everything. Naomi's heart sank. "That's impossible. Ty encrypted everything. And I hired the people who taught your brother how to encrypt." Gregory smiled. "I've been erasing evidence for 30 years. You think I'd let a college student outsmart me?" Santos pulled out his phone. "FBI is still coming. You just committed." "Committed what?" "My security team was responding to reports of an armed intruder. Understandable mistake in a tense situation. No one can prove I ordered anything. And everyone who knows the truth." Gregory looked at each of them. "Well. You're all standing in a room with no cameras, no witnesses, and a man who has diplomatic immunity and $8 billion. You're going to kill your own son?" Naomi demanded. "Again. I'm going to protect my legacy. Brandon should have stayed in his coma. Should have died quietly. Instead, he woke up and brought all of you into something that was none of your business." Gregory's voice hardened. "I built Westfield Technologies from nothing. Sacrificed everything. And I won't let it be destroyed by a son who's too weak to understand what real power requires." Brandon stared at his father. "You killed my mother. Both of them. And you were going to kill me. I did what was necessary." "Then do what's necessary now," Brandon said quietly. "Pull the trigger. Call your snipers. Finish what you started. But know this, you won't ever stop running. Won't ever feel safe. Because somewhere, someone will find the truth. And when they do, your legacy won't be an empire. It'll be a gravestone marked murderer." For the first time, Gregory's mask slipped. Uncertainty flickered in his eyes. That's when the freight elevator behind them opened. And Keisha Wade stepped out, covered in blood but alive, with Dr. Fiona Blackwell in handcuffs. "Looking for this?" Keisha held up a voice recorder. "Dr. Blackwell just confessed to everything upstairs. Every murder. Every payment. Every order you gave. And it's all on tape. Admissible in court." Gregory went very still. "Your daughter really loves you," Keisha continued. "Loved you enough to take the fall. Thought she was protecting you. But the moment I told her you were down here trying to kill her brother, she changed her mind. Funny how that works." Sirens grew louder outside. FBI tactical vehicles screeching into position. Gregory looked at his daughter. "Fiona. What did you do?" "I stopped being your weapon," Blackwell said quietly. I'm done. The FBI breached the loading dock. Agents swarmed. Gregory Westfield, billionaire, murderer, architect of 30 years of death, raised his hands in surrender. And Brandon Westfield, poisoned twice, left for dead twice, nearly erased from existence, stood beside the waitress who'd saved his life, and watched his father fall. 6 months later, Naomi stood outside the Daily Center in downtown Chicago with microphones pointed at her face and 2 million people watching online. The trial of Gregory Westfield had become the story of the decade, billionaire serial killer brought down by a waitress with folk medicine and a dead father's journal. Everyone wanted a piece of it. Everyone wanted her story. Brandon stood beside her, recovered but changed. Detective Santos coordinated with FBI agents in the background. And Ty held a tablet showing the live stream numbers climbing every second. Brandon spoke first. My name is Brandon Westfield. 6 months ago, my father poisoned me. Before that, he murdered both my mothers and a researcher named Dr. David Chen. For 30 years, Gregory Westfield used wealth and influence to commit murder and call it business. Today, the world knows exactly who he is, not a billionaire philanthropist, but a serial killer who finally ran out of money to hide behind. The crowd of protesters erupted in applause. Brandon stepped back. Naomi approached the podium. My father taught me that medicine isn't about degrees. It's about listening when someone says they're in pain and believing them when everyone else says they're wrong. Naomi pulled out a photograph of Dr. David Chen. He spent his life studying remedies Western medicine dismissed. He saved lives doctors said couldn't be saved. And Gregory Westfield murdered him for it. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. Today we're announcing the Chen Institute for Ethnobotanical Medicine at Northwestern University. Fully funded. Permanent. My father's life's work will finally be recognized, and his legacy will save lives for generations. Subscribe, this legacy will never die. Detective Santos took over. The FBI investigation uncovered 17 murders spanning 30 years. $430 million in financial crimes. Shell companies in 12 countries. Bribery of 47 officials. Gregory Westfield will spend life in federal prison. But the system that enabled him? That's still here. Still protecting powerful people who think money makes them untouchable. He stared into the cameras. It doesn't. Not anymore. After the press conference, Naomi walked through Chicago's Loop with Brandon and Ty. The city felt colder now. Sharper. Trial starts in 3 weeks, Brandon said over coffee. My father's lawyers want a plea deal. The prosecutor wants my input. What do you want? Naomi asked. I want him to face what he did. Every victim. Every family. But part of me just wants it over. Brandon stared into his cup. I'm restructuring Westfield Technologies. New name. New mission. Returning every stolen dollar. It'll take years. Might bankrupt us. But I'd rather run an honest small company than a corrupt empire. What about you? Brandon asked Naomi. You turned down $10 million. Turned down book deals. What now? Back to Lou Mitchell's tomorrow. Breakfast shift. Pour coffee. She smiled at his shocked expression. I like that job. Like the regulars. Why give it up? Because you could do anything. Be anything. I don't want to be famous. I want to honor my father and live my life. Naomi stopped walking. Besides, someone has to keep making you decent coffee. Brandon laughed for the first time in months. Deal. They reached the lakefront. Wind cut across gray water. It's not over, Naomi said quietly. The trial. The publicity. People want this to be a simple story about good defeating evil. But it's not simple, Brandon finished. My father's going to prison, but the system protecting him is still there. So we keep fighting, Tai said. Keep exposing. Keep pushing. That could take the rest of our lives. Good thing we're not going anywhere. 3 days later at Lou Mitchell's, a young pre-med student approached Naomi's counter. Are you the one from the news? The Chen Institute is accepting fellows. I'm just a student with no credentials, but my grandmother was a curandera in Mexico. Traditional healer. She saved my life with herbs when doctors gave up. Can I apply? Naomi looked at the application form. At the determined face. At the future her father dreamed of. Fill it out. I'll make sure it gets to the right people. The student smiled. You're changing the world. No, Naomi said, pouring coffee. My father changed the world. I'm just making sure people remember his name. She went back to work. Pouring coffee. Taking orders. Living her life. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't fame or fortune. It's keeping a promise to someone who can't see you keep it. Hit subscribe, because truth always wins.